Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Hold on. Hello. Yay. You can hear me? Oh my gosh. Okay. I had all kinds of technology issues right before this. That's hilarious that it was the microphone. Oh, yeah. Okay. So let me just start over. Actually, let me get the timestamp on that so I can go back and I can't even see how far into this we are. Oh, that's delightful. Okay. Hi. Technology. Good deal. So what I was saying was that this is a live stream that we do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this live stream runs for about 3 hours. So if you have any questions, comments, you need some support, this is a good place to be. And let's see, what else was like? Oh, book club. I was going to remind you guys about book club. Book club is always the last Thursday of every month. And this month we are reading and discussing the book, The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Fantastic book. It is a little bit triggering. So just kind of a heads up with that. And if you want to see what books we are reading, you can go over to my website, which is thriveafterabuse.com/book club. The book for March is going to be Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay Gibson. So I hope that you can make it to book club. Karen is saying, please turn up the volume. Is that better? I don't even know if that makes a difference, what I just did. Is that better? Volume is what? Why? Why is the volume still up? Give me just a second, guys. Travis and I were messing around with stuff. Let's see. Is that better? How about that? How about now? Hello? Okay. I think this is all I can do for tonight, at least. So, okay. Angie says it's better. Okay, good deal. Chaos. Okay, good deal. The other thing I wanted to open with tonight, actually, was, I'm sorry, a little bit frazzled here. Agatha had mentioned something the other day that I thought was really profound and something worth discussing. And that it was just a side comment that she made about one of the biggest, or like one of the first steps in healing. One of the most important first steps in healing is learning to trust your reality. And I agree with that so completely. That is such an important part of healing. And it's a step that I don't think is really discussed enough. I see a lot of people, and I'm guilty of it too, where there's so much of a focus on understanding narcissists or understanding problematic behavior. And there's not enough emphasis placed on understanding and getting grounded in your reality. And if we're not grounded in our reality, the odds of us getting tangled up with another problematic person or situation is really, really high. So we've got to be able to tell when we're experiencing something that's uncomfortable. And we must for sure be able to tell when we're being mistreated. We've got to be able to tell that. And the way that you tell is how you feel. So if something's uncomfortable for you, it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel like, ooh, that's odd, or that's weird, or I'm not sure if I like that. If you're being mistreated, that feeling magnifies. It's, whoa, I don't like that at all. I don't think that's okay with me. I can't believe they just said that. I can't believe they just did that. So once we're aware of we are being treated in a way that is not okay with us, then we need to make a decision. We either need to be assertive and address it, and hopefully they will change, or we need to leave And what you decide to do there at that crossroads is going to depend on kind of how severe that behavior is and if it falls within your deal breakers. So it's really about knowing yourself and knowing kind of what, just what's okay with you. The second thing I wanted to touch on with that was we had a question yesterday in the live stream that Angie and I do, and we didn't address it because we ran out of time. But this gal had asked, basically, how do you go about finding healthy people after being around a narcissist for so long? Because it totally warps your sense of reality, and there's just so much craziness around you. How do you find normal people? And I was kind of chewing on that question for a little bit. And my normal probably default answer would be meetup.com is a great place. Really avoid dating sites, especially if you're lonely. That's really not the place you want to go to make friends. You're going to have a better chance of meeting kind of like-minded people, cultivating your hobbies and doing things that you really enjoy. That's kind of my default answer to that question. However, I think that question deserves more of a response, and it really needs to reinforce that first point of really getting grounded in your reality. So how do you find normal people? Really, by and large, you don't. They're out there. It's less about seeking them out. It's more about filtering what's coming in. So, because if we don't have a solid grasp on our reality and when we're being mistreated and when things are uncomfortable and we don't know how to assert ourselves, we don't feel comfortable with walking away, we can't tell when something's a problem or if we're making a big deal out of it, then it doesn't matter, because we could be in a room with, actually, let's just take that a step farther. We could be in a room full of completely quote unquote normal people. Because nobody else knows where your boundaries are, the odds of that person stepping over them in a more mild way, not like in a really boundary busting kind of narcissist way, but in a more mild way, that's still going to happen. So there's no shortcut around this. Like, we have to be able to tell, hey, that's not okay with me, and then be able to address that person and get back on track. Okay. Let's see here. Thank you, Missouri Cowboy. He says, yep. Learning discernment to be able to filter. Excellent answer. Yes. And well, thank you. And it really truly is such an absolute game changer, because once you realize that, then you stop seeking validation from other people. You stop going to support groups or your therapist or your best friend and saying, I experienced X, Y, and Z. Is that a red flag? Am I safe? I can't tell. I need you to tell for me. And the problem with that is other people are lacking context. So and a lot of this stuff can seem really petty. It can seem like really small things, but within the larger context, which they're not privy to, it can be a really major thing. And you also don't know who, the advice that you're taking from other people. They might have really dysfunctional thinking, or they might have some really antiquated ideas about boundaries and standards and deal breakers. So at the end of the day, we are the ones that have to live with our decisions. And so I get it. I get how being out of these relationships, you can really question everything, and everything can feel like a red flag, and it can feel like you can't trust anybody. But taking the time to get centered and to get grounded in who you are and how you feel, and realize that there is no such thing as something petty, that there is no such thing as, a small deal. If it's a big deal to you, then it's a big deal to you. And that's okay. It's okay to just fully own that. And even if everybody in the room is disagreeing with you, if you're like, hey, you know what, that's not okay with me, then it's not okay with you. Let's see here. Let me scroll up. Good deal. Deborah says, I know when I'm being mistreated now. I love that. That's such a victory. That's such a victory. And let's see, let me scroll up. Um, let's see. Kitty says, how do you best coexist with the knowledge that a former partner who physically harmed you may circle back around in the future despite court orders? I think you develop, you plan for worst case scenario. So, okay, worst case scenario, they do circle back around. How are you going to handle that? How are you going to handle if they try calling you, if they show up at your house, if they start following you in your car, or they show up at your work? And so kind of rehearsing, getting that plan in place before you need a plan in place. That way, if and when this were to happen, you're not so knocked off balance for it, because you know, okay, you know what, if they show up at my house, whoever, if you live with other people, they all need to be aware of the plan, that you don't let this person in, you don't answer the door, you immediately call 911. Period. End of story. Doesn't matter if they tell you that they're having a heart attack, or that they had a car accident, or that that they love you, or that they want to give you a gift. It doesn't matter what they say, you're not letting them in. If they are following you in your car, okay, pulling in to a place like a 7-Eleven, or if you can, driving straight to the police station, and then you just put on the horn. So a place where there's other people around. Keeping your cell phone with you, keeping it charged, having a charger, make sure you have a charger in your car. You might want to have some sort of self-protection in your house. Travis and I have a wide variety of things here. We have outside cameras. I have a can of bear mace, which will drop a charging bear. That's illegal in some states, but just you need to use what you're okay with using. And so, yeah, kind of erring on the side of caution. If they show up at your work, letting your coworkers know, okay, I had a restraining order on my ex. He might or she might resurface, and this is what they look like. If anybody asks for me, don't let them into my office. Don't let them, like, if any guy shows up here wanting to talk to me, it's not good. So just give me a heads up. Things like that. And if it continues, and if that's something that happens, you are getting harassed, it might have to get to the point where you consider moving. Let's see. Lighthouse asks, will karma catch narcissists or not necessarily? I think more often than not, their behavior does catch up to them. I mean, you can only, especially nowadays with the internet, it's really difficult to be a lying, scheming, cheating person. People film everything. People blast stuff on the internet. They do screenshots. It's really difficult to be a shady person in this day and age. So more likely than not, their behavior is going to eventually catch up with them. It might take some time, but it generally does. And I think, but like you said, sometimes it doesn't. And this is one of the hard things, I think, for so many of us to kind of comprehend, of when it doesn't. And the way that I kind of made peace with that was truly realizing that life is not fair. Life's not fair. Little kids get cancer. Sometimes bad people win the lottery, and everything in between. Just these things happen. So realizing that life is not fair, at the same time, life is still very good. There's still a lot of amazing things that are going on and that we can be a part of. And so I think realizing that, well, and not only is life good, but that life was never meant to be fair. That's such an important part. It's not that God forgot you, or that if you believe in God, or that life is somehow fair for other people. Life is truly about like becoming the highest and greatest expression of yourself. Okay. And in order for that to happen, there's a lot of personal growth that has to happen. And in order for a lot of personal growth to happen, there generally requires a lot of pain. And a lot of pain tends to come from these pretty significant events in our life like this. And so I think just kind of realizing that everybody's going to go through something pretty major in their life, whether it's the death of a loved one, an abusive relationship, cancer, um, you name it. There's everybody goes through stuff. And it's not so much having a good life isn't about avoiding the pain. It's about taking the pain and using it for our highest and greatest good. So you can become the highest and greatest expression. You can become self-actualized, I think Maslow would say, that you reach that top level of your pyramid. You become the highest and best expression of who you are. And then at that point, you can take everything that you've learned. And even if you don't do it intentionally, like starting, a YouTube channel or a blog or anything like that, just living by example, living full out and having an authentic life, you're going to inspire other people to grow and to become the highest and greatest version of themselves. So even though that life's not fair, even though that karma may never catch up to them, it doesn't mean that that life isn't still good for you, and that you still there's still so many good things that can come of it. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, let's see here. Thank you. Roasted Studios says, "You go, Dana." Well, thank you. Oh, I love that. Speculator. What a beautiful way to say that. It says, "Look at your soul's life plan." Yeah. Yeah. I think if you can have that mindset, and it's difficult when you're in the middle of such a tremendous amount of pain, to kind of see that there's anything after this, because it just hurts so much. It just feels like that this pain will go on for the rest of your life, and that this is like like the event in your lifetime, right? Um, but I think if you make up your mind ahead of time of, okay, yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes downstream in life, and making up your mind ahead of time of how am I going to handle it when it does, it can really, really help. Well, that's cool. Deborah says, "I've been going to the doctors to get myself checked and eating right. That's part of what I've been doing to better myself." I love that. Good for you. Forward Looking asks, what's the book for divorcing narcissists with kids? I have a friend in this boat and he is pulling all the tricks I've heard about. Uh, the one book that we read that I really liked, I think everybody should read it if you have children, is called Divorce Poison. And it's all about how to spot manipulation and the other parent turning the child against the other parent. And so how to spot it, how to disable it as it's occurring, how to ideally prevent it, and what other family members need to know as well. Highly recommend it. Let's see. Okay, I'm scrolling up here. Okay, I'm getting questions. I forgot to check my phone. Cha-cha-cha. Okay, Mandy asks, I've just learned about Peter Pan syndrome. Can somebody have narcissistic personality disorder and Peter Pan syndrome? My ex seems to have NPD, but is attached to his mom's umbilical cord. Yes, absolutely. Peter Pan, I think it depends on the narcissist for sure. But I would say that a lot of them do. They have kind of this, they live in this fantasy land where they keep postponing reality because they think that this fantasy is going to eventually happen. And it tends to be really grandiose. They're going to be a famous actor. They're going to be a rock star. Um, there was a guy on I think it was Dr. Phil a few months ago, and I rarely watched, I've probably seen 3 episodes of that show in the past 3 years. But anyhow, I was watching this episode and this guy was in his mid 40s, I think, and wanted to be a rock star. Like couldn't hold down a job. He was married. I don't know if he had, I don't remember if he had kids or not, but his wife was like, this is, buddy, when, like, I need, we've got responsibilities, and when are you going to kind of modify the dream? Like maybe can you play at like local bars on the weekend? Can you play at shows? But this whole, continually selling everything and not working full time and trying to live this dream, it's just, it's not realistic. So yeah, I think that's probably more common than not with a lot of them, is that Peter Pan syndrome. And that is pretty wild when you see it. That's a great question. Siddharth asks, how do you know when you have healed from CPTSD? I'll put my phone over here so I can see. Hold on. Come on. Making me nuts. Okay. How do you know you've healed from CPTSD? I guess I view CPTSD, I view healing. Let me back up a little bit. My definition of healing is not a return to who you used to be. So I think first and foremost, just understanding that can be really helpful, because if you're kind of using your old self as that benchmark for truly healing, you're going to be really disappointed, because life is always about moving forward. It's never about going back to who we were. But I think a lot of people have a hard time with this, because these events profoundly change you. And so if a person's holding on to again, like using that as a benchmark, then they just feel forever broken. So I like to view healing as kind of cultivating a new and empowered self. And there still might be, everybody experiences different CPTSD symptoms at different degrees of severity. So there's still things that I struggle with. Mainly anything, my startle reflex is through the roof, and it has been for years. So it's just, I just have to laugh at it. I don't feel that I'm hyper vigilant around people per se. I probably tend to err more on the side of caution than most people, but I feel like I also see reality a lot more clearly than most people. So, again, I don't feel that I'm hypervigilant. Some people might call it that, but when you see enough of this stuff, you just realize, no, this is a very valid fear, very valid concern to have. So I guess I would say, if you're having CPTSD symptoms, part of that's just probably going to be normal. If you're truly healed from it, I would say that those symptoms don't drive your behavior or dictate your life. So they might still be there. So like I was saying, my startle response is still there. I've come to accept this. It doesn't drive my behavior, and it doesn't dictate my life. I still go out. I still, I do what I do. Other people around me just know that I mean, you have to laugh, because I just absolutely lose it around, if we come around the corner at the same time, or it's ridiculous. I could even know they're home. I've joked with Travis many times that I'm going to put a little like cat bell on him, because I just, I'm thinking about stuff and I turn around and he's right there. It just, freaks me out like you wouldn't believe. I have a hard time watching horror movies because I've been known to throw popcorn accidentally. It's a reflex. I just panic. So there's just certain, you know, certain things that I still deal with. But I think the biggest challenge that a lot of people have with CPTSD is learning how to trust other people again. That kind of level of hypervigilance and that level of paranoia and um, distrust, that will be there. I think you have to realize that is there in order to keep you safe. So it's not that you're broken, it's just that you had something happen to you that a lot of people don't. And so when anything traumatic happens, your brain is going to be on constant watch for it in order to keep you safe. So the more that you can get grounded in your reality and understand, learning how to trust people differently is a big one. So whereas before the old us might have been very quick to trust people, we took them at face value. We were very quick to open our lives, our home, our wallet to them, just kind of thinking that, well, other people are just like us, you know, and now we all know that is not the case and things can go really bad with that. So the old way that we used to go about trusting people is frankly, it's problematic for everybody. In this day and age, honestly, probably forever, it's always been like this. It's really important that we have trust be something that's earned and not something that's freely given. And it's earned with appropriate behavior over a consistent period of time. So back to what we were saying about getting grounded in your reality. As you're getting to know a person, they're at an acquaintance level. Your conversation with them is about the conversation you'd have with a coworker or maybe your neighbor. Kind of surface level stuff. It's polite. You're kind of getting to know them, their hobbies, if they have children, whatnot. As you start opening up and you're telling them about things, you're paying attention to how are they receiving that information and how are they interacting with you. Are they sarcastic? Are they belittling? Are they snarky? Are they, are they teasing you in a cruel way? Are they treating you in a way that you just don't like? Whatever that might be. That's the sign to kind of start, okay, you know what? I thought I had a lot in common with this person, but they're not emotionally safe. So I'm going to start distancing myself from them. I thought we could be great friends, but no, I think we need to just kind of get some distance there. When you can rely on yourself to keep yourself safe like that, a lot of that hypervigilance will calm down. Most people tend to have to keep that hypervigilance because they haven't shifted how they go about trusting other people. They instead of shifting it to moving slower, getting to know a person, trusting their reality, addressing any issues they have, adjusting accordingly, what a lot of people do is because they're trying to go back to their old self, they're like, man, what's so wrong with me? Why can't I just take people at face value? Why can't I just love like I've never been hurt before? All this stuff that people tend to say. And because you might see other people doing this, oh, they were sleeping together right away and they got engaged on the 4th date. Isn't that so romantic? And oh, they moved in together after 3 months, this kind of stuff. If we're not aware that that's a problem, like that's more likely going to crash and burn, that's not romantic, that healthy people don't move that fast. That's a huge red flag. That's not anything to think, oh, I wish I could be that, right? So if you can start, you just see, I think, behavior differently, but if yours and other people's as well, but if you're thinking like, boy, I really wish I could be like that, I wish I could take people at face value, then you're going to feel really broken unnecessarily because you're trying to get this, go backwards and basically fall back into dysfunctional behavior. And your brain, the deeper part of your brain won't let you, which is kind of cool. I mean, if you think about hypervigilant, the PTSD stuff, it's basically all of your defense systems are going off. How cool is that? What an amazing thing our brain does for us. What a gift. Seriously, what a gift. So now it's learning about how can we work with these this alarm system, this internal alarm system of ours that's going off in all of these different ways. So your brain is on your side. Yeah, Jen says, oh, wow, that's true. Now I'd be like, nope. Yes. And Risha says, I noticed a huge difference in terms of my hypervigilance calming down after I felt like I could show myself that I could keep myself safe. Yes. I mean, I just can't stress this point enough, because if a person, it's shifting that mentality. It's like that first question we're talking about, that person had asked, how do you go about finding normal people? How do you go about finding safe people? How do I avoid attracting narcissists? This kind of stuff. Those types of questions, the core of them and why they are so at the core problematic is they're all of your power and control is outside of yourself. If you're thinking, how can I prevent attracting narcissists? How can I prevent from getting hurt again? These kinds of things. These events are, because we got caught up in it once, and we didn't see it for what it was. It felt like it was completely happening to us. And then, of course, in many ways it was, but we would have been better equipped to be self-protective and respond to it had we known then what we know now. So, now there's just so many lessons in this. So if you can regain your power and just realize you can keep yourself safe. You know what it feels like when something feels uncomfortable for you versus something that feels comfortable for you. You know what a toxic person behaves like and how they feel when you're around them. You know what a nourishing person feels like. You know that if their behavior falls into your deal breakers, that you can cut bait and drive on. You don't have to let them drag you through hell again. A narcissist could be attracted to you all day long. You don't have to let them in. So it's not about trying to avoid other people, because other people are, you're going to attract who you attract. And any of us, narcissists are attracted, they're attracted to supply. So I see a lot of this stuff on the internet, and it bothers me because it's only a half truth. There's this idea out there that narcissists are only attracted to empaths or really kind of kind and good and decent people. And that's not true. They're attracted to supply, whether or not that, and I've gotten so many emails over the years from people that are like, Dana, I don't get it. How did this happen to me? I'm an attorney. I'm a real gut buster. I don't take any flack from anybody. I own my own business. I'm a cop. How, I'm a big guy. How did this happen? And they're shocked because they don't fit that image in their mind of what a victim of emotional, psychological, or any form of abuse is. So it's important to realize that they're just attracted to supply, but we don't have to give in to them. And the more empowered you become, the earlier you can see this stuff for what it is, and then you can respond accordingly. And it will really help a lot of those feelings of hypervigilance and anxiety calm down. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll down here. High quality says toxic people are attracted to easy, low-lying fruit. I would say more often than not, that is the case. But there are some out there that are sadistic, and they might target people that are not easy to manipulate or the low-hanging fruit because they like the challenge. And they get their ego fed by destroying somebody that, you know, that is, seemingly not the low-hanging fruit. Agatha says, Dana, would you consider that first red flag, besides the confusion, the feeling that someone isn't interested in you, but what they can get from you, what kind of experience you provide for them? I guess it depends on a person's situation. That for sure is a red flag. If you get the feeling that yeah, it's sort of that you are a utility, that you serve some sort of purpose, like they're really attracted to the kind of car you drive, or your profession, or your nationality, or your house. I don't know, these kinds of things, and not you, then that's a problem. For me, the people in my life that I have experienced this with, I would say first and foremost, the first red flag was they came on like a whirlwind. And this has been with men, this has been with women, this has been in terms of like relationships, in terms of friendships, in terms of coworkers. That's been that was the hook that had me for a very long time. And I continually misread that level of intensity for sincerity. And they, did a really great job. There was a lot of, when you're around somebody that's charming, you feel good. They laugh at all your jokes. They seem to have a ton in common with you. They can do a really great job at getting other people around, or their target especially, to relax. This is especially the case if they are attractive. They want to spend all their time with you, these kinds of things. And I just fell for that time and time again. And because I wasn't slowing down and building trust in a healthy way, because I was very quick to jump in that whirlwind, thinking like, well, I need to love like I've never been hurt. And, I've got to trust sometime. And, I don't want to miss out on a good thing, kind of a thing. Like, this person seems so amazing. I know this is different. And then boom, getting right back into that cycle again. So my guess would be that different people experience probably different red. I hadn't thought about this before until just now. I would bet that while there are a lot of commonalities between the early red flags, my guess would be that everybody's early red flags are different, because it's going to be based on the hook that continues to hook them. So had a manipulator tried another approach, I probably wouldn't have even noticed it, because it had no appeal to me, because it wasn't feeding into that vulnerability that I had. I'm gonna have to think about that. So I'll be curious to hear from you guys. What are the common red flags? Like, what were the hooks that had you early on? And what were some of your early red flags that you remember? Anonymous Healer says, has anyone tried electroshock therapy or magnet therapy? Is it effective? I've tried antipsychotics, bipolar medication, benzos, amphetamines, SSRIs, SDRIs, MOAs, and so on. If your depression is, I guess it depends what's going on. Is it, if you were diagnosed as bipolar, is it bipolar 1 or is it bipolar 2? Do you have manias and then do you have depression, or do you have just kind of more consistently just depressed and then more depressed? That's gonna depend. I have only ever had one patient over many years who had electric shock therapy. That's not something that's commonly prescribed, and most psychiatrists won't even touch that. She had profound depression. That treatment, it worked in the sense that it just kind of, this is going to sound really maybe too casual. It's just, but this is as plain as I can say it. It just scrambles your brain is what it does. It just kind of like short circuits your computer. But the thing with that is you don't know what's going to come back online and how a person's going to be changed after that. So with this one particular gal, yes, her depression was a lot more manageable, but she'd had a series of electric shock therapies, and every time her baseline for her behavior continued to decline. So there are some pretty severe side effects with that. I would encourage you, if you've tried all of these different things, maybe try putting EMDR on your list, and EFT is another therapy. Trying to think. Does anybody else have any other ideas for anonymous healer? I will tell you something, and this has just been I have struggled with depression pretty much my whole life. And I realized, and I forget which book it was. Oh, it was the last book we read, The Tao of Fully Feeling by Pete Walker. As I was reading that book, I realized, because if you are familiar with my past, I've been hospitalized for depression twice when I was younger. Like I said, I've struggled with it all of my life. When I get depressed, it's basically, it's persistent depressive disorder. I get depressed and I stay depressed, and it can be for years, and it's awful, and it's always there. One of the things I gained from that book, but I kept saying over all of the years, I don't feel sad. My depression doesn't feel sad, like sadness, but it feels like all of the other symptoms. And I don't know what's going on with me. When we read that book, it dawned on me, he had said something, women have a hard time getting in touch with their anger, and men have a hard time getting in touch with their sadness. And I get goosebumps saying it, because I'm like, oh my God, that's me. There's a lot of things I have been really angry about over the years, and even like current frustrations with myself. And I did not know how to express that. And so it was manifesting as depression. When I had that realization, a lot of my depression lifted because I was able to pinpoint what was going on. Now, granted, I am also now on an antidepressant because but part of me also wonders, but I'm scared to go off of it because things can get so bad for me. Part of me really does wonder, with this new aha moment, how much would that change? So that might be something. If you haven't read that book, The Tao of Fully Feeling by Pete Walker, I highly recommend it. I would be curious to know what you think of it, and if there's any aha moments that you have for you. But yeah, the kind of depression like that is just can be so difficult. And I'm sorry that you're struggling with that. Gallery Art says, ditto on depression. Finally got a prescription for Zoloft when I was 37. Yeah, the right medication can just be an absolute game changer. That was one of the most rewarding things when I was working as a psychiatric nurse, was seeing the transformation. I get goosebumps thinking about seeing the transformation of so many of our patients who were profoundly mentally ill, profoundly, could not take care of themselves. Their hygiene was just not there. Their ability, they were so disorganized. They were often chronically homeless. Sometimes they weren't eating. It was just really sad. they would, if they could get on that right medication, and 9.5 times out of 10 they did, it was, they would come back in 3 months and it was like a totally different person. Shocking that eye contact, their hygiene, the conversation, their body language, I mean, it was just, it was so cool to just realize, wow, this person just got their life back. It's huge. Agatha says EMDR helped her with her childhood abuse. Yes. I still would like to set up an appointment with I've never gone through it, to go through a session just so I would be able to speak more about it. I've known some therapist friends of mine over the years that are certified in EMDR, and they absolutely swear by it. And uh, there was a former psychiatrist that I used to work with, and she would refer patients there that had been through, like, severe trauma, where medication wasn't working, where therapy wasn't working, like nothing was working for these people. And EMDR, 9 times out of 10, helped, like, profoundly. So I've heard nothing but good things from it. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Anonymous Healer says, I have severe genetic chronic depression and PTSD. I've tried 36 different prescription meds and EMDR. I was bedridden for 2 years after college. I'm still mostly bedridden. Well, I think if you've gone through that many different medications, and it's so tough. It's so tough because when a person's that depressed, they oftentimes don't feel like socializing. They don't feel like eating right. They don't feel like exercising. And that just kind of creates this perpetual cycle within the depression, just gets worse and worse. If you have, and I know this might sound really trite, but again, not meaning to be, because I get a lot of that, uh, understand a lot of like that major depression. Um, have you tried exercising do you have the energy to be able to get out and to get some vitamin D, go for a walk, go for a jog, even if it's just around the block, even if it's 7 minutes? Is that something that you could do? And also, have you tried hypnosis? Sometimes that can be really powerful. Okay, let me see here. Am I getting more texts coming through? Yes, I am. Okay. Tammy asks, how do I stop getting anxious and jittery when having to talk to my ex? As soon as he calls or texts, I am shaking and get a sense of immediate and get a sense of immense dread. What can really help with that is to prepare yourself as much as possible ahead of time. So that way you're not continually knocked off base. So if you know, and I guess it depends, do you have to have contact with him? Like, do you have children with him, or is there a reason that he's still contacting you? Real quick, I'm scrolling through the chat here, waiting for Tammy to answer, but people are mentioning also neurobiofeedback can help with depression. Yes, that can, biofeedback is fantastic, and that can help with a wide range of physical and emotional issues. Anxiety, depression, stress, pain, even. Okay, let's see here. Oh, well, thank you. Patricia says, wow, Dana, you saved my life a few years ago. I just wanted to thank you. Well, but thank you so much. I'm just so thrilled, humbled, and honored uh, that this YouTube channel was able to do that. So I'm just so glad. Okay, let's see if Tammy. Okay. Okay. She says, I am considering a no contact order. He is very verbally abusive in texts. And yes, they have children. Okay. So some other ideas might be if you can contact your attorney. There are quite a few like neutral third party type apps out there. If anybody in the chat remembers, I need to write these down. There's I don't remember the names of them, but there's some apps out there where it intercepts that kind of nonsense. So instead of being able to communicate with you directly, they have to go through this app. And the benefit of that is it's, it's a paper trail. So they of course won't like that. They're going to, oh, I don't want to have the expense for that. I don't want to this, I don't want to that. But you don't need that. You don't need to be on the receiving end of any abuse or ridiculousness. So I would talk to your attorney about some options that you have and just have it be like, no, you go through the app and we're only talking about the children. And just not, and I think too, what can help is to realize this is how he acts. He is having an adult version of a temper tantrum. And this is just how he acts. And if you can really fully embrace that and quit expecting him to act any different, it can really help to set you free. Because it tends to be more of, we keep having this expectation that one day they're going to finally have manners or have respect, and they never do. So really getting real, like, and then that way, if he is halfway decent, you're surprised by that, but you're no longer surprised by any of the verbal abuse. So for the time being, before you can talk to your attorney about potentially going through one of these apps, I would encourage you to think about whenever I guess first and foremost, I would, if he calls you, I'd let it go to voicemail. If you're going to respond to him, I would do it in a text message. That will help kind of filter out his behavior. When you do listen to your voicemails and he's just, being verbally abusive, I would encourage you, visualize. Do you remember the teacher from the cartoon strip Peanuts? And whenever she would talk, it was wah, 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 wah. Play that in your mind. Think of that. Whenever he's talking, it's just wah, 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 wah. It's just nonsense, nonsense, nonsense. Words, words, words. Whatever, buddy. Don't own it. Don't own it. Just, it is how he is. And it's a sad, sad way to be, but you don't need to own that. Oh, wonderful. Angel says, Dana, I don't think I could have left my abuser without EMDR. I'm 2 years out and thriving. Everything has improved. My spiritual health, physical and mental. It has been intense work. Very cool. I love that. That's, I think a really strong testament to EMDR. Agatha was saying that she, in her phone, under the name that she has saved for her ex, she has a bunch of empowering phrases that help her to be strong when she has to answer the phone and deal with him. That can help. Naming him, if your kids aren't going to get into your phone and see this, just so it'll put a smile on your face when he does call, name him something silly that's going to make, it'll just remind you, yeah, it's going to be a bunch of ridiculousness. Maybe you call him Voldemort. Maybe you call him Buttface. Maybe you call him butt face Voldemort. You know what I mean? Like just some sort of silly, ridiculous name uh, that just kind of makes you chuckle when you answer the phone. And it sets your mind in that frame of, yeah, nonsense. It's going to be a few minutes of nonsense. Oh, Pink Pixie's here. Hello. High quality distractions, laughing at butt face. uh, I had mine, my second sociopath in my life. I had him saved in my phone as Pet Cemetery. And that was so great because this is before I knew any of this. Is the man that I fell in love with and the man that I found out he really was were two very different things. And so when, our relationship died when I found out that he was living this whole double life. When he came back, I had to keep reminding myself, I'm like, Dana, it's like Pet Cemetery. What's coming back is not him. It's some sort of monster. Don't fall for it. It might look like him. It might sound like him. It might say kind of the same things, but it's not him. It's evil. And so having that saved in my phone as Pet Cemetery helped to remind me of get in that mindset. Like, don't fall into thinking that he's sincere or that this time is going to be different or any of that. Like, see it clearly. Sam says, whoa, yeah, that's creepily accurate. Yeah, it's wild when you see it for what it is. Oh, that's a good suggestion. Jack Lumen says, I do light therapy as well. My late father-in-law built me a light box that's installed in our Chubb and Tower area for maximum exposure. The whole family loves it. That's a fantastic suggestion. And if you don't have a light box, if you have a Planet Fitness gym in your area, a lot of them have like light box, like a big kind of walk-in light box thing that's in the tanning section. And it's free if you have the whatever, the silver membership. I think it's $20 a month to go there, but it's unlimited use of that light box thing. And they also have massage beds and massage chairs and those kinds of things. I think too, even sometimes sitting in a tanning bed for a few minutes, especially during the winter, can really help. Yeah, vitamin B, vitamin D, these kinds of things. Jens asks, what's a light box? A light box, these light boxes are exactly what they sound like. So they're like a box with a full spectrum light. So it's a specialized light bulb in them. And it helps to cure, or I should, cure, treat seasonal depression especially. But it just helps boost your mood. It's weird. It's like you'd think that we're plants or something, but these grow lights basically that we expose ourselves to, you leave with this improved sense of well-being, and it's pretty instant. So yeah, it's cool. Getting some lab work done too might be worth your while if you're experiencing depression that they can't seem to find a cause to. Vitamin D is it functions like a hormone in your body, and it can really throw everything off. So getting your vitamin D levels checked, getting your vitamin B levels checked, getting your thyroid checked, these kinds of things, iron levels, just a whole blood panel. It's probably a good thing to do, on a regular basis anyhow. Okay, let me see. Okay, so Agatha just sent me what she has hers, what she has under her ex's name. She has, I am brave in my boundaries. I am awesome. I can and I will stand my ground. I know real from fantasy, and I choose healthy reality always for me and my daughter. We are the light and the salt in this world. We are blessed, redeemed, loved, and saved in Jesus' name. So that's quite the description, but I think it's fantastic. I had never thought about putting all of that in a description, but I think it's great to have all those anxiety or affirmations in there. Okay, let me see. I'm scrolling up here. Anonymous also had mentioned, Dana, I'm practically bedridden now with the severe depression and PTSD. I'm slowly deteriorating. Do I need to get hospitalized to get on Social Security disability? This is 20 years of trying 36 different medications. Generally, no, you don't need to get, as far as my understanding goes, I don't think that you need to get hospitalized in order to get on disability. But I do believe that you're going to need to have some sort of form that a psychiatrist would need to fill out. So if you have a psychiatrist that you've been going to, I would talk to them. I'd make an appointment and let the receptionist know I'd really like to talk about getting on disability because this is completely debilitating and I just have a really difficult time. So yes, people can get on disability for PTSD or for a wide variety of mental health reasons. So if you're at that point, it is, I mean, it's worth advocating for yourself and seeing what all needs to be happen, what all needs to happen. They'll also be able to tell you if they feel like, because they're going to need to write a letter to the Social Security office. They'll be able to tell you, okay, yeah, I do think that you're a candidate for this, or uh, no, I don't. But if you've really gone through that many medications, my guess would be that they would be willing to write that letter. Um, but like I said, it's worth a phone call. Sarah asks, Dana, do you provide therapy services via Skype? No, I don't. Um, I do, I just do this live stream, and then I have two different support groups that I'm in. So this live stream's here every Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It runs for 3 hours. You can find me on Facebook under Thrive After Abuse. My website is thriveafterabuse.com. The Facebook, if you're going to join the support group on Facebook, make sure that you're joining the group and not the page. Feel free to like the page, but it can be confusing because they're the same name, and it can be really easy to post what you think is the group, but it's really the page, and then all kinds of issues. But I'm in there every single day, multiple times throughout the day. Okay, let's see, scrolling through. Rob asks, when you first left the narcissists in your life, did you have difficulty reading at all? I don't really remember of anything about reading. I do know that my thinking, I used to joke and say that I felt like I had mashed potatoes for brains. Again, this is before I realized that, that I was struggling with PTSD. So, because I felt, and the reason, the reason it took me so long to even go get help for that was I felt like what I went through it didn't seem like it was traumatic enough to be able to cause that. My understanding at that time in my life of PTSD was that it had to be something really severe, like Vietnam or, a war or a horrifically physically abusive relationship. I just didn't identify. My situations were incredibly traumatic, but it didn't seem um, what was going on with me mentally and emotionally seemed didn't seem to line up with what had happened. And um, I was also very confused too. This again, this took me years to realize, was I had thought, again, at that time, that the symptoms, I thought the symptoms would also be more in a line with what I had experienced. Like you hear all the time, you've got somebody that comes back from war, for example, and the 4th of July is like the worst night of the year for them because it sounds like bombs going off. And you can see all the fireworks in the sky, that kind of thing. Or they hear a loud noise and they drop to the ground. It's more direct. It's more seemingly cause and effect, right? They heard a loud noise in war. They heard a loud noise in here. They have the same reaction. They heard a certain song in Vietnam. They hear that certain song today and it's boom, instant flashbacks. My stuff wasn't that direct. I felt I was incredibly distrusting of other people. I was incredibly angry. My anxiety was through the roof. I had a really difficult time with thinking clearly at all, and doing things in a logical, sequential order. That was when I really realized that there was something really wrong. Because a lot of that stuff I just chalked up to stress, and I'd always been kind of more on like the jumpy side forever. That got worse, but that didn't seem like that big of a thing. It was the not being able to think in a linear solutions oriented fashion. Like, so for example, if I had a series of errands that I had to run, I could not figure out a good order. So let's say, for example, I had to go grocery shopping and I had to go to the bank and I had to go get my oil changed. I couldn't, and it was during the middle of the summer, for example. It was weird. So if I had this list of things to do, instead of kind of thinking like, oh, well, you know what, I should go grocery shopping last. That way the groceries aren't sitting in a hot car and the ice cream's going to melt, or you know what I mean? I wasn't thinking that way. It was like I'd write things on a list and then I would go and do them in that order. And that was when I realized, okay, this is not how I normally do things. Like I'm doing things that don't make sense. And at that time, God, it was so awful. I just had so many important decisions to make, and I did not trust my decision-making ability, which is a problem. And so I continued to ask. I needed validation from other people that what I was thinking made sense and seemed like a good idea. So, and that was kind of a crapshoot. There were some things that they had said, oh, I think that's a terrible idea, that really would have been a good idea, and vice versa. But at least it prevented me from doing, I think, anything really, really wild. I think that's the point, or what we were talking about at the beginning, the importance of getting grounded in your reality. So we're not looking outside of ourselves for answers, because you just don't know what kind of answers you're going to get. And some of the biggest damage is done by well-intended people. So there is no substitute for you to be able to trust your judgment, really. Gareth says, I need validation all the time. And you know what, Gareth, making this shift. So now that you're realizing, oh, okay, it's really important for you to trust your judgment, to trust your perception of things, to know when something is right for you and to know when something is wrong for you, to get in tune with that. Some exercises that you can do to help kind of strengthen that muscle is to break that cycle of asking other people for validation. So try to catch yourself when you're doing that, and instead stop yourself and think like, no, really, what do you think? What do you think? Having an opinion. I think so many of us default into I don't know, or I don't care. People ask you, hey, where do you want to go to eat? And you say, oh, I don't know. Well, I don't care. Whatever, wherever you want to go. It's totally fine. What kind of music do you want to listen to on the way there? Oh, I don't know. Whatever works for you is fine with me. And we get so used to just not asserting ourselves and not having an opinion on these are like little things. And then we're the same way on bigger things. But if you can start with the little things and realize it's just you're building up this muscle, start having an opinion and not kind of acquiescing or, kind of abdicating any responsibility for it, but like truly standing your ground and being like, well, you know what? Actually, I could really go for either pizza or Chinese. Those, I'm flexible, but these are the two that I could really go for. Or validation, asking yourself, okay, what am I wanting validation? This is such a big one. What am I wanting validation on? And then slowing that down. Normally, because here's the thing about that, we normally ask for advice when we know the answer, but wish we didn't. You know how it feels when something is right for you. There's really no second guessing it. There's no hesitation. It tends to just be like pretty much a hell yes. Yeah, that's totally for me. There isn't this waffling. There isn't this kind of, oh, I don't know. Is this for me? Is it not for me? You just kind of know. So really catching yourself of what are you turning to other people to get validation for? Because there's normally a hidden hesitation there. And if you can do some digging and figure out, okay, what is that hesitation about? Is it that this person or this situation is just not for you, but you were wishing that it was? Or is it there's some sort of fear of you're just wanting validation that it's okay for you to spend, I don't know, X number of dollars on something, or validation that, whatever it might be. So it's worth slowing that down and figuring it out. Okay, let's see here. Agatha's talking about different responses, saying, I was wondering if you had a freeze or run first response. Yeah, just kind of off topic a little bit here. The book, The Body Keeps the Score, that we're going to be discussing next Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, talks a lot about the different brain chemistry, mechanics, neuroscience behind a lot of traumatic behavior. What happens to the brain, what happens in the short term, what happens in the long term. That book is just so groundbreaking as far as trauma goes. Okay, let's see here. Okay, let's see. Scrolling up. That's a great question. M. Hawk asks, Dana, what is the difference between an online relationship with a narcissist versus a real life narcissist? What are the key differences? My guess would be that ones that are online are probably going to be more grandiose, and they're going to tell more lies about who they are and what they've done, because it's just a lot easier to lie online. With online stuff, I for sure wouldn't take anybody for face value until you've met them. And even then, like, that would just be the start, because people, even if they're not intending to be manipulative or malicious, people can post old pictures of themselves because they're in denial that they've aged or that they've gained weight or whatnot. So, and most people, when they write their description on like a dating profile or whatnot, it's like their resume. Everybody kind of over exaggerates their strengths, and they tend to present their highest, they tend to present the person that they wish they were. So you have to kind of get to know a person to see how they really are. Um, I think that would be probably, that would be my guess, would be kind of the main difference, but I don't know. I don't know. There, and kind of what I'm thinking about, there was a gal, this was several years ago. She she was writing to a prisoner, an inmate, and this guy sounded really sadistic and just dark and just disturbing stuff. And she had fallen head over heels for this guy, and their relationship, was all through letters and such, but uh, just the stuff that he would write to her, the tone that he would speak to her, the demands that he would make, was really scary. He had a girlfriend, um, and it was just really, and I forget, he was in jail for some pretty major stuff. And one of the last conversations I had with her, because he wasn't even love bombing her, it was, he was just pretty domineering right out of the gate, and unapologetically so. And some people are really attracted to that. I think the more kind of lost and scared a person is, the more they tend to be attracted to that overbearing, domineering kind of personality. And I was so scared that when he got out, that he was going to kill her, because all of his letters were just this kind of a lot of dark fantasies, and just, uh, I guess what I'm saying is, in that scenario, there was no pretend fantasy life. It was kind of this dark fantasy life. He was very open about what he liked and what he expected. I think that's probably less common, though, frankly. I would be curious to hear what uh, what people have experienced if it's been online only. The people that I'm trying to think of the different problematic people I've met online over the years. They've generally just all been full of it, like just a lot lying about who they are completely, lying about their profession, their name, their age, their everything. Yes, that's a really great point. Camilla says, yeah, false intimacy. Like, you can feel very close to someone you text every day and not really know them for who they are. Yeah. And that's one of the big reasons I'm, I push so hard about being very wary of that. This is an easy hole to fall into. I'm speaking from personal experience. That level of false intimacy can really feel real. So if you're meeting people online, especially dating, they're most likely they're going to present the self that they wish they were. And if that's what you're looking for, your brain is going to start filling in all of the gaps. And it's going to, without you knowing, like, you're going to create this whole fantasy in your mind of and we all do this, like what you think this person is like, just like we do this when we're starting a new job. We have this whole idea of what this job is going to be like, right? There's the fantasy, and then there's the actuality. So with everything. So yeah, with online stuff, I'm a really big fan of, if you're chatting with somebody online, do not let them soak up your time. You don't know them. You don't know what they really look like. There could be a person that's married and they're bored and they're horny, and they're at work and they have no intention of ever meeting you. They have no intention of obviously anything serious because they're married, and they're just wanting to get nude pictures. They're just wanting to flirt. They're just wanting somebody to listen to them. So you really have to guard your time. And so kind of just kind of staying mindful of that. So what I encourage people to do when you're talking to people online is, if you're reading their profile, it sounds like, oh, it sounds like this person would be somebody I'd be really interested in. You know, they email you, you email them, however that goes. You kind of maybe 2 or 3 emails back and forth. At that point, you know, a phone number needs to be exchanged. And so then it moves to texting. At a minimum, I'd talk to them on the phone just for 5 minutes before you actually meet in person. You want to see if there's that chemistry with them over the phone, or if you get a weird vibe over the phone. There's been a handful of guys that once I got on the phone with them, I knew right away, like, oh, wow, okay, my fantasy of this has just been shattered. There's no chemistry on the phone. But then I'd still go on the first date just to see if that was the case. And then sure enough, yeah, there's nothing there. So, texting back and forth a few times, making sure that you talk to them on the phone. Nowadays you can do like video, so Skyping or something like that, just for a few minutes. Maybe that is even your first phone call. And then meeting them. So not having this chat go on for like longer than a week. You really want to get to meeting them to see, okay, if I really want a relationship, are you serious too? Because if they're serious, they're going to want the same thing. They're not going to want to continue on this pen pal type relationship. I will also say too that people that are entering into the dating scene now, I see this a lot. So this is why I'm bringing it up. In this day and age with the internet, whatever's out there is out there forever. And it can be, I would just encourage you, if you ever are dating somebody or you're married to somebody, you get to the point of sending sexy photos, if you're going to do that, don't put your face in there, and don't have any tattoos on there or anything like that. Because what I encounter on a fairly regular basis is, oh my gosh, Dana, my ex leaked these photos. I'm horrified. What do I do? And that's really difficult to kind of do damage control on something like that after it's out. So I had a friend of mine who was basically had just had this purely sexual relationship with this guy. She was fresh out of a divorce. She just didn't want anything serious, and just kind of, I think, enjoyed the attention and the fun of it all. But anyhow, so this guy kept requesting sexy photos. She kept sending them. She ended up calling things off with him, I don't know, a few weeks into it or whatever, just kind of fizzled out. The guy flipped his lid and began, just this tirade of like verbal abuse, and telling her that he was trying to blackmail her with her photos, and saying that if she didn't pay him, I forget how much it was, X number of dollars, that he was going to put him online. So you just don't know. Just err on the side of caution with everything that you do. Okay, let's see here. High Quality says sexy photos is a red flag, in my opinion. I think if somebody's coming out of the gate with that kind of stuff, for sure. I think if you've been with somebody for a long time, or you've been married for a long time, that can be kind of, it's just context. It's like with anything else, right? Like there's just context. If it's kind of depersonalized, then yeah, if you're just being treated like an object, but if it's kind of fun and flirty and you're just kind of spicing things up, that's a different thing. If it's a total stranger, if somebody's coming out right out of the gate and they're calling you, they're wanting to move fast, they're calling you, pet names. Hey, babe. Hey, doll. Hey, sweetheart. Hey, gorgeous. These kinds of things. You haven't met them. You don't know them like that. They don't. That's disrespectful for somebody to come on that strong right out of the gate. So paying attention to the stuff that's early on, little boundary violations early on, um, kind of taking liberties of giving you pet names before they know you well enough to give you a pet name, um, calling you or texting you at all hours, getting upset if you don't answer back right away. Um, just becoming difficult or demanding, or if you ask them a question or set a boundary, they either fly into a rage or they give you silent treatment, these kinds of things. Oh, well, thank you. I get that for the live stream donation, and says, have faith and hope in you. The more you invest in knowing, loving, and valuing yourself, the faster and easier it is for you to recognize the vibe of fake intimacy. You won't feel chemistry, nothing, nada. 1 minute and you will know. Absolutely. That is such a great point. So, like we were talking about earlier, when I was saying, when I had the realization of, yeah, this was the hook that had the love bombing stuff had me every single time. I just didn't connect it because they were all different people and it was done in different ways. And I had, some of them were friends, some of them were boyfriends. So it, different people in my life and different roles and all that, I just didn't connect it. So, um, that hook worked on me until I saw love bombing for what it was. Once I saw it for what it was, psh, nothing there. It totally lost its appeal. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I stopped falling for it. Every now and again, there still was that appeal because, man, it feels so good for, when a person just makes you, uh, just builds you up like that. It makes you just feel so seen and important and loved and accepted. That can just feel amazing. And that's how people, it just, especially if you're lonely or if you're, uh, you know, I don't know, whatever. It can really lure a person in. But I think once you're able to do the work of finding out the hook that has you or had you in the past, you're going to look at those hooks differently in the future. And you're going to be a lot less inclined to be hooked by them because you're going to see it for what it is. And like Agatha was saying, you recognize that vibe of fake intimacy. You truly do. Once you're able to regain that, your sense of self, your perceptions of reality, your um, self-esteem can be a little bit tricky. And I don't even think you need to like fully heal that because that can be quite the mountain to climb. But at least getting to the place where you value yourself, you value your energy, your emotions, your time, your environment, your body. This stuff is not freely given. Like, this is stuff you don't, think of it this way. You don't spend time, you invest time. That's the difference. Fake intimacy, false friends, all of this kind of fast food type relationships that we can have with people, that's spending time. You're not going to get that back. It's time spent. If you're around nourishing people, it's time invested, and that investment pays dividends. It's going to continue to just be rewarding, and hopefully it's the same for them, right? So it's a mutual investment, and both people are able to leave the situation, a better person, basically. Let's see. Jen asks, Dana, I don't want to date, like, ever. Is that normal? LOL. I think that's pretty normal. Yeah, especially when you've been hurt to this level, it truly is just like a bomb goes off inside of you, and numbness, anger, just general detachment can all just go on hold. This kind of stuff, your whole life just tends to kind of go on hold. Um, there's there's that loss of identity that tends to happen during an abusive relationship, but then afterwards there truly is that loss of sexuality. If other people are struggling with this, or you're feeling this way, something I would encourage you, I think this is part of just reclaiming your autonomy, is to take time to feel sexy. So, and this is just for you. This isn't for anybody else. It's not trying to, you know, get dolled up for anybody else. Like, this is for you. Feeling good, possibly get something that just makes you feel good in your own skin. So maybe for women, some sort of sexy or flirty or fun bras and underwear, or some sort of nightie that you sleep in, something like that. It will feel uncomfortable. I will say that at first it really will, but I think it is important that we do regain our sexuality. So, just, I don't know if I don't know if I should go deeper in that or not, but I guess we'll just leave it at the diving into owning your sexuality and being comfortable with just being attractive and just being comfortable in your own body for you. Marilyn Manson was married to what was her name? It was I think it was something like Rita Von Teese. It's a cute name. But he was married to a stunningly beautiful woman. She was like a peep show, kind of, I don't know, like pinup model looking, beautiful, classic beauty. And she had said, so she was very well known for just being very stylish and classy, even though a lot of her, work tended to be pinup kind of girl stuff. And she had said that her whole concept was that she bought sexy lingerie for herself. It wasn't for men, it was for her. And so she had said that her whole mindset was, I'm buying this for me because I like the way that I feel in this. And if I'm going to be intimate with you, then, well, you just get to experience it. But I'm not buying this for you. She just really owned her own sexuality. And I just, she just is a class act. I really enjoy her. If you're interested in looking them up, she's cool. Okay, let's see. Tracy says, I was married for 37 years and I don't want to ever date or remarry. I'm enjoying the peaceful life without all the emotional and mental craziness, and I'm starting over at 64. Well, I think that's a great mindset to have, that you're enjoying the peaceful life without all of the emotional and mental craziness. There's a lot to be said for having peace in your life. My mother is 74. And she divorced my stepfather, and she was in her early 60s when they divorced. And she just couldn't handle it. She's like, I want to do what I want to do. I want to have peace in my life. I just don't want to deal with the nonsense. And she really poured herself into, she does a lot of traveling with friends. There's a senior group that she has at her church. They go to she runs circles around me. She's got more energy than me, and she does a ton more stuff than I do. I need to step it up. But, just because a person's a certain age doesn't mean that life is any kind of less vibrant. So I guess just kind of know that. And Agatha said she is going to bed. Okay, good deal. Yes, Postmodern says one of the last things her therapist said was, "Don't let anything disturb your peace." I love that, and I agree completely. That statement, I think, is even more profound than we give it credit for, because once you make that shift to fully making your safety and sanity a priority, and making having peace in your life a priority, everything else starts falling into place. That you're not, I'm sure you guys are the same way. Like, you look back on your life and those really stressful, abusive, awful friendships or jobs or relationships you were in, we tend to look back on that stuff and just think, oh my goodness, I really wish I would have left so much sooner. And so now going forward, if we can really honor those, that having a level of peace and joy our new baseline, our new standard, and very quickly removing ourselves from anything, either setting boundaries with somebody, it's up to you, going low contact, going no contact, whatever it needs to be, really valuing having peace in your life and distancing yourself from crazy makers. It's a game changer. Karen asks, Dana, can you please advise on how to best handle family relationships that are low contact? I guess my question to you, Karen, would be, what are you struggling with within that dynamic? Is it pressure from other relatives? Is it pressure for them? Are they aware that you're kind of going low contact, or I mean, has this been an ongoing thing that you've been low contact, or is this fairly recent? If you could give me some more context, I guess, is what are you struggling with, and what are they doing? And are you feeling any like obligation? Like what kind of emotions are surfacing? Wonder Woman says, does waking up with anxiety with no trigger come from CPTSD? It can. It for sure can. It's weird. CPTSD stuff is so strange because it's it's all of these different defenses that we have, and then there's all of these emotions that tend to be the result of these different defenses that we have. And because it's not so direct like regular PTSD is, there's not such a clear cause and effect, it can be really difficult to tell why you're feeling the way that you're feeling. And it can be very confusing. But yeah, anxiety, hypervigilance, distrust, numbness. I think sometimes really feeling just out of control emotionally, especially at first. So crying really easily, becoming enraged really easily, these kinds of things. Okay, let's see here. And while I'm thinking about it, there are, this is something that I'd like to do more of. So Paul, if you're watching this, I know we've been talking about this for months, for probably like a year now, and this has been my fault, not his, but we've been talking about making some different like relaxation and affirmation videos. We really just need to sit down and hammer this out. and get the ball rolling on that. But in the meantime, two people that I absolutely adore are Jason Stevenson and Michael Seeley. They have their own YouTube channel. They have dozens, if not hundreds, of videos for all different types of stress reduction, relaxation, guided imagery, meditation, these kinds of things. I'm such a big fan of this kind of stuff because it's it's free for starters. It's easy. You don't have to do, when a person is so emotionally fried that everything just feels like it requires so much effort, this can be just such an easy way to bring some peace into your life. So before you're going to bed at night, you can go one of their videos, whatever, guided meditation for sleep or something for anxiety reduction, and just let it play. And it's amazing the difference that can do. These are also videos that you can do during your lunch break or getting up early in the morning. I sometimes listen to them before I do my live stream to help get myself grounded and centered. And if I'm feeling really anxious, that helps. That helps with that. So that might be something to kind of put in your toolkit if you're struggling with anxiety or insomnia or any of that kind of stuff. Oh, good. ASMLH says, Dana, thank you. I'm learning so much here tonight. Awesome. Awesome. I am thrilled to hear that. It's amazing. It's amazing what the clarity and the validation that can come from just, I think, knowing that you're not alone and hearing from people that are in all different stages of healing. I think that's one of the most powerful things about having community, whether it's a support group or whether it's an online chat like it is tonight. It's just, it's so nice to just feel heard and people that get it, you know? Because I think if a person hasn't lived this, it's so many of these questions uh, they struggle with even understanding, and oftentimes they also don't, like, one of the things that I encountered in moving forward in my healing was the people that I was turning to, that I was trying to get help from, mainly therapists. Nobody identified what was going on with me. And so, and they, and I went through quite a few, like, I wasn't getting anywhere. And what I needed, and I really feel, I mean, after running a support group with like 54,000 people in it and doing this day in and day out and working with tens of thousands of people over the years, I really have come to learn that there is, doing the whole psychoeducation component of it, of teaching and talking about the educational component of it, what this stuff is and what it isn't, and things to expect, and all of the fundamental stuff is a really necessary piece for healing for everybody. That's probably the one constant thing that I've noticed across the board with this. So people that have gone through emotional and psychological abuse, talk therapy or CBT in general doesn't help. They're just going to continue going in circles because they're oftentimes, they don't know what they don't know, and they don't generally know what happened to them, and they don't know how to prevent it from happening again. And they really need somebody. It's like, I really feel, and I think this will happen in time, that there really needs to be a specialized like certification for working with people that have been emotionally and psychologically abused, because it's a totally different approach and a different skill set. It's a lot more similar to uh, working with cult members that have left a cult, like helping deprogram them and then reprogramming, helping them get back in tune with who they are and reprogramming them in a healthy, empowered way. So it's different. It's completely different than I think what you'll find out in the world. So Donna asks, have you seen Dirty John on Netflix? I have not. They actually sent me an email. I don't know, probably about a month or so. I don't even know. I'm terrible with time. A month or so ago, maybe, wanting to see if they could be a sponsor for my show and for my podcast and for my YouTube. And um, all I know about them is that it's the story of just kind of the sociopath and, kind of using and exploiting people and all that. And I was so offended by the email that well, first of all, I didn't respond, but I just kind of, I guess I was so mad that I'm like, I don't even want to watch the show because I just hate giving uh, garbage behavior any money or any airtime or encouraging any survivors to go there for any clarity or validation. I guess I know that a lot of people find a lot of value, and I get it. Like, it's helpful to see this kind of behavior in motion, whether or not it's real or if it's a person acting the part. I think that there can be some value in it. I just feel it just feels I don't know, it just feels icky for me. So yeah, I should watch it. I should just get over that and watch it. There was that show, then there was somebody had recommended the show You, and somebody had recommended the R. Kelly documentary. Poor Travis. I just have to say, poor Travis. I am so, even though I don't like a lot of that kind of stuff, because I just get really worked up over it, I am very interested in cases that have happened in the past. So I guess that's different in my mind, because it's not giving that kind of stuff a spotlight because it's already over. But I was watching a video last night on the BTK killer, and his daughter had written a book, and she was talking about her life with her family, and then finding out that her father is a serial killer and her story. So I just find that stuff fascinating. Phoenix says, oh my God, the movie You is crazy, but it's so good. I will have to check that out. Okay, let me see. Karen, you were gonna give some info about your family and low contact and all of that. And then I just got going on a tangent here. So let me see if anybody can find Karen's comments about more context with her situation, please repost it. Please, please, please. I'm going to be looking for it as well. Here. Wonder Woman says, I have tried listening to Michael Seeley, and unfortunately his voice reminds me of something bad in my childhood, but I can't put a finger on it. I try to get past it, but sometimes I can't. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's good that you're aware of that and that you honor that, of like, there's just something about it that just doesn't sit right with me. That's totally fine. His voice, if I remember correctly, his background is in hypnosis, whereas Jason Stevenson is not. It's more guided meditation and imagery and visualization. So Michael kind of brings a lot of hypnosis to his work, and some people are comfortable with that and some people aren't. But Jason's incredibly talented, and he's got this wonderful accent, English accent, which I could listen to that all day long. That in itself is like ASMR. Okay. Let's see. I'm catching bits and pieces here. From Karen, who's saying her only son takes after his dad, who she divorced years ago. And okay, so trying to figure out what the dynamic is. Your son an adult now? And is he the one that you're low contact with? Let's see here. Jen says, oh, wait, he has an accent. What's his name? Yeah, Jason Stevenson. Actually, they both do, I think. But Jason Stevenson is the guy I was talking about. Karen says, okay, her son is 25 and she's going low contact now with him. And so is the challenge more of an internal struggle that you're having, or is he kind of, is it just making peace with the fact that he's your only son and that he's so much like his father and that you're having to go low contact with him? Is that the struggle? Or is it something else? She says he's very condescending and disrespectful. Well, yeah, she says, yes, he's so much like his dad, same issues. I think it's good that you're holding the line and not tolerating being treated like that. You know, nobody needs that, regardless if they're your child or not, or if, it's, in some ways it's easier because he's, I'm hoping, out of the house. So you don't have to deal with that kind of stuff. But I think it's good to hold your line and just be like, son, I love you. I would like for us to spend time together. But, I think we just need to lay some ground rules down. Like, I'm not going to do the condescending behavior, the belittling, the verbal abuse, the name calling, or the yelling. I'm not going to treat you like that. And I don't expect you to treat me like that. So can we start over and just start fresh and kind of have some ground rules? If he's upset, if he's got a bunch of kind of unprocessed anger from growing up with an abusive father or the divorce or whatnot, letting him know if there's stuff that you're holding on to that you feel that you want to talk to with me, if you're angry, if you're, however you're feeling, let's sit down and talk about it. But let's keep it civil. Okay, let's see here. There was a question. Let me see. I was trying a new technique with Angie's live stream the other day where I was copying and pasting questions, but it's so much easier because I can hunt for them when she's talking. And I don't know. Do you guys watch the Tuesday live streams at all that we do? Those, by the way, it's every Tuesday. We rotate channels. Those are at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and they run for about an hour and a half, depending on what we've got going on that day. But I enjoy them. I think it's fun to kind of have some different perspectives. And Angie's got she's a higher energy person, which is nice. Gets me going. Okay, so here's a question from AJ who says, Dana, I'm stuck, elderly, boundary breaking, raging, shaming, guilt I'm stuck with an elderly, boundary breaking, raging, shaming, guilt tripping dad. He preys on my empathy and I fall for it every time. His fragility and age prevent me from going no contact, ? So it's, let me just give you my 2 cents on this. I don't think that it's your empathy is why you're continuing to fall for it. It's, and I think you're right that he is preying on those kinds of feeling, guilt and pity and sympathy and love. If you're continuing to fall for it, it's not so much the empathy, it's a lot of blurred boundaries and uh, the manipulation. We tend, in general, people tend to fall, um, to continue to get tangled up with manipulators like that, in part because if they're family, especially if they're an elderly parent, we might not want to let that relationship go, or we might feel trapped. Like, okay, this is the only relationship that this person is able to have with me. And so I'm just going to hold on to crumbs in this kind of mistreatment, because if I didn't take these crumbs, I'd get nothing. So there tends to be kind of some deeper drivers as to why we tend to get sucked back into fear, obligation, and guilt, especially when it comes from family. So it's, I I think it's fine to cut off contact with anybody at any time if it's, especially if they're abusive. That's just never okay. And that's pretty much a basic understanding that all adults, especially, have. You cannot, most people understand this by the first grade. You cannot go around treating people this way. You can't hit, you can't slap, you can't spit, you can't cuss, you can't, push, you can't shove, you can't, you know, do these things. This is the basics. And then if people don't respect that, then there's consequences for that. So uh, if you if you feel that you need to go no contact, I completely respect that decision. If you decide to go low contact, here's the thing too. Sometimes it's a lot easier when we kind of give up the ghost, when we give up the fantasy of things being different, when we realize I don't have, here I am continuing to get sucked in by all of this obligation and guilt in order to try to maintain some sort of semblance of a relationship. When we can get to that point of, you know what, there's no relationship here. And I have been trying to pretend and convince myself that there was. So when you can get to that point, and it can be very difficult to finally get to that point, but it sounds like you're there, where you're like, you know what, there is no relationship here. It's very one-sided, and it's driven by my guilt and pity for my father. It's a lot easier to be assertive when you realize there's nothing for me to lose, because you're at that point of, he either needs to start respecting your boundaries or you're done, and you're totally fine with being done. So if you're at that point, you might want to just try laying it out for him. You know what, Dad, I am so close to being done. You've treated me like this for the past X number of years, and it's going to end. And if it doesn't end, I'm done. So here is what I expect from you, and here is what I'm going to give you in return. So it's not like a one-way ultimatum. Like, I want these to be the new ground rules for our relationship. If there's any if there's any warmth or any type of positive regard that you have for him, this might go over better. It will go over better if you can kind of sandwich it. So if you can start off with, you know what, Dad, our relationship has been really rocky my whole life. There's a lot of things I like about you. I'm just saying it. Whether or not you agree with this, I don't know. There's a lot of things I like about you. There's a lot of things that you did right. I think we both know that there's a lot of tension between us, and we're both getting older, and I just would like things to be very different between us. And it really hurts when you say X, Y, and Z. If I want to spend time with you, I want to be able to do it because I enjoy your company, not because I'm feeling or if I do X, Y, and Z, it's because I am doing this for you, not because I'm feeling manipulated into having to do this. And I just want you to know, like, A, B, and C um, is going to be stuff that I don't do anymore. So we need to find somebody else that's going to go grocery shopping, run errands, do whatever. And if that's even pertinent to your situation, just spelling it out and just say, I really hope that you think about what I said. And I'd like to give things another shot, but a totally fresh start, and see where that gets you. And then you'll have your clarity at the end of that conversation if he's willing and able to kind of level up and be respectful, or if he is completely not willing to meet you on your terms. And then you have that you have at that point that validation of, you know what, I have truly tried everything and now I'm done, and I have peace with being done, because this is not reasonable to continue going this way. AJ says, will this work if he is a narcissist? He has very pronounced traits. He might be able to hold it. They can generally hold it together. That's the thing. When they are so like explosive with their behavior, it's generally because they know they can be. So I would imagine odds are he's appropriate when he goes to the grocery store. He's appropriate when he goes to the doctor. He's appropriate with the mailman. He's appropriate when there's that expectation, really is what it is. There's that expectation that he act that way. So if you make it very clear, if you're at that point of this needs to happen, X, Y, Z needs to happen, I am just at the end of my rope and I don't want our relationship to continue like this anymore, this is it, then you know. And if he defaults back into treating you terribly, then you know. Then you know. And if and when he, well, not when, but, or I shouldn't say not if, but when he passes, you're going to be able to look back on this time and have some sort of closure and some sort of peace. I guess regardless of what you do, even if you don't say your piece and try to be assertive, if you are at the point where you want to go no contact, I think it's important to kind of consider you don't want to have regret. And because we've been responsible for so many feelings, they've instilled so much kind of false guilt and shame and pity and all kinds of emotions. It can be a very emotional time when a narcissist passes. There's a mix of emotions. So kind of knowing that, I would work backwards from that, because when he passes, you want to just be able to be like, you know what, hands down, I absolutely tried everything. And now I have that peace that I need in order to walk away. Yeah, teacher VIP says, I laid it out for my narcissistic mom just like that. Many times over the years, I warned her, I set my boundaries. I made the choice to no longer allow her in. She made the choice to keep her patterns. Yeah, it's sort of like with anybody with problematic behavior, like you've seen those shows, Intervention, right? That when things get that extreme, that family or people in their inner circle they're like, I mean it. I might have threatened this for years. I might have begged. I might have pleaded. I might have cried. I might have maybe had some consequences, but they didn't last for very long because I thought you changed. Or I just got worn down by guilt and your anger and pity and all these things. But this time, I mean it. And so when they're doing that intervention with that person and they're saying, this is what you've done, and I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to loan you money. I'm not going to lie for you. I'm not going to bail you out of jail. I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z. And that very, very rigid boundary it causes enough pain in terms of like an addict or an alcoholic, where they're up against the wall. They're now at that crossroads. What are you going to do? Because the pain is now so severe. If you continue abusing substances, you're going to, everything is changed. Like, we're not going to be here to support this. And it normally takes that amount of leverage in order for a person to start making some different decisions. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't anticipate that it would, you know, be this kind of life-changing revelation for them, and that they'll, you know, that you'll somehow magically have this wonderful relationship with your father. But sometimes this is more for you. It's not even for him. It's more for you to just know, okay, I've said my piece. He couldn't level up. And now I know for certain I'm done. Okay. Shirley says, I'm struggling right now with wanting and wondering why he's not hoovering me. It makes me sick that I feel that. Yeah, that's very normal. I think more normal than most people would realize. And I think it's in part because change is always difficult. In an ending of a relationship is always difficult, no matter how bad it is, because there's been this routine that's been established. There's been, if it's with a romantic partner, there's been this intimacy that's created. There's this sense of comfort because it's predictable. Even if there's abuse going on, it's what a person knows. And we can all be like this, right? Even if it's a job, if you have this awful job where you have this total nightmare for a boss and everything about it is just awful, by and large, humans are wired for consistency. And so it's really difficult for us to get pushed out of our comfort zone to make those necessary changes. And these feelings of longing tend to be part of that, where it's like, oh my gosh, I miss the comfort zone. I miss what I thought we had. There's a lot of things about him that you probably do miss, because most abusive people aren't abusive. Well, they are abusive 100% of the time, but there can still be some good times, right? And it's just a transition in life, and there's difficulty there. But I think it's good that you realize that that's not healthy for the long run, and that you're upset by missing a person who has mistreated you. So it doesn't mean that you need to feel bad or that you need to feel shame or guilty for feeling that way. But I think what's healthy about that is the realization of, this relationship's toxic and I'm craving something that's toxic. That's a good realization to have. A lot of people that tend to miss, Angie and I were talking about this yesterday. There's a lot of people that are so deep in that mud of dysfunction that they're really holding on to any crumb of hope that this person cares or that this relationship can be saved. And so if they get hoovered, there's this part of them that gets all excited and giddy and hopeful of like, I really hope he hoovers me or she hoovers me, because then in their mind, then it somehow shows that he cares or that they care. And I had said something else that I had noticed quite a few times in the support group is people who will ask, they'll hear about, oh, there's primary supply and secondary supply and this, that, and the other. And then they'll ask, well, how do I know if I'm primary supply? And it's like this very dysfunctional thinking of, well, if I'm primary supply, then that somehow must mean something, right? It must mean that they value me more than all of the secondary supply. And that's really tangled up thinking. So yeah, it can just be a lot to untangle from. These feelings don't last forever. I guess just know that too. The busier you can stay doing things that really nourish your spirit, the better off you are. So filling up your schedule with things that are nourishing for you, whatever that might be. It might be listening to these guided meditations at night. It might be going to these live streams. Angie's got a bunch of them that they do during the week. It might be doing that. It might be going to, I don't know, Al-Anon groups during the week. It might be going to meetup groups and engaging in new hobbies. It might be going out with friends or taking up a new hobby or going to church or listening to, if you're, Christian or religious, listening to different sermons on YouTube while you're getting ready in the morning, this kind of stuff. Because the more light and positivity and nourishment that you can bring into your life, it just lessens the pull of the darkness. That sounds kind of dramatic, but it's true. BM asks, how many % of the world is a narcissist? Ballpark. Well, last I read, which was a while ago, I think estimates were anywhere between like 3 to 5%. But you figure that's narcissist. I would say you figure probably another 3 to 5% for antisocial personality disordered people. And I think you could also figure another 3 to 5% for borderline personality disorder. Although I would say with borderline, I think you guys know how I feel about that. I think by and large, a lot of people that are diagnosed with borderline are not narcissistic. They tend to be more like traumatized, codependent people, traumatized empaths. So, but there are like those malignant borderline personality disordered people out there. So if you combine all of that, and that's just estimates, and frankly, I think that that's a little bit low. But let's just say all in all, we could even throw histrionic in there. Okay, so we'll say 3 to 5%. So let's just err on the low side. So you've got four major personalities that are very erratic and dramatic and emotional and very relationship busting and can be very manipulative and damaging. There's 4 of them. Let's just say 3% for each. So that's 12%. 12%, that's 12 out of every 100 people. So that's quite a few, you know? Siddharth says, so Dana, the cup is white this time, huh? Yeah, we got a bunch of white mugs. I don't know where I don't know where I put my red mug, to be honest. I think I put it up high in the cabinet, but yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Gigi says a lot of borderline diagnoses are incorrect and actually traumatized, otherwise healthy individuals. I absolutely agree with that. And I will be very curious to see kind of how the more light that's brought to understanding trauma, I think there's going to be some pretty major shifts down the road with like the next, well, hopefully with the next like revision of the DSM. I don't know if any of this will, get to such a mainstream level, but by then, but I think there's going to be some shifts in trauma. EFT, EMDR, that's been a fairly recent thing where before it was really viewed as kind of this alternative therapy. There wasn't a lot of credit given to it. But now it has a really strong footing and used often to treat trauma. Let's see here. Yeah, Camilla says narcissists come from major trauma too. That's the confusing part. Yeah, here's I think we all get caught up in this of, at least I do. I'll just speak for myself. Can get caught up in thinking, well, there has to be this major trauma that happens in order to cause such awful behavior. And I really don't think that's the case. Sometimes I think it's anything that we perceive to be traumatic. So, and because that really varies from person to person, it could be something that we would look at and think that's not that big of a deal. So for example, the first sociopath in my life, pretty much everything about him was a lie. But what I do know to be a truth is his parents are the cutest couple ever. They're happily married. They've been married for 50 years. All of his siblings, happy, healthy, well-adjusted. He has no childhood history. His parents, there was no addiction. There was no neglect. There was no abuse. There was nothing. He had a fairly ideal childhood. They spent time together on a very regular basis. They went on vacations. I mean, great childhood. But from what he had told me, he had gotten a girl pregnant in high school. And I really feel like that was the event that just threw him for a loop and was a big cause of it. I really do. So people handle trauma in a wide variety of ways. And, there's kind of this talk like nature and nurture, and the body keeps the score. If I remember correctly, I think that they kind of, Bessel van der Kolk kind of talks about this in there, but actually, no, I think it was Pete Walker's book, the CPTS, from surviving to thriving with CPTSD. In his book, he had talked about, we have all these different defenses: fight, flight, freeze. He calls it fawn. I call it friend. I just think it's easier to understand that way. But I think we all have different defense mechanisms that we just default to. Some people, the way that they handle stress and anxiety is that they go into fight mode. Some people, like me, I very rarely go into fight mode. I need to go into fight mode more often. So my default tends to be flight is probably my most common one. So part of me kind of wonders with narcissists if it's that like their fight. And I think Pete Walker talks, it's been like several years since I've read that book, but I want to say that was his kind of theory, was that narcissists tend to default into that fight defense, which explains everything. So they kind of get locked in that, and they're really defensive, and all of this kind of stuff is an overcompensation for things: the grandiosity, the arrogance, the over the top ego. It's all a compensation for, feeling less than and feeling out of control and feeling inferior and this kind of stuff. So I don't know. I think at the end of the day, here's what I think would help with this kind of stuff. Trauma is one of those things, it's not talked about until a person's going through it, right? Especially in Western culture. We are sheltered from so much. We're sheltered from death. We don't talk about, especially nowadays with kids, we prevent, a lot of people are coddled. You're getting participation trophies. There's um, you just don't have, kids don't have experience with processing these really uncomfortable emotions. I mean, all that stuff comes from a very well-intended place, but the downside is they are not developing the resilience needed in order to handle bigger problems down the road. So I forget what video I was watching. It was some video about death and dying, and it was how death was handled in different cultures around the world. And I had never really thought about it before, but with other cultures, the dead relative is in their house sometimes for days, and it's not seen as anything creepy or scary or gross. It's just seen as this is their time to pay respects. So they're more in touch with kind of those feelings that go along with it. So uh, we just don't discuss a lot of this stuff. And so again, things happen in our life, and then people don't tend to seek help for it until they can't handle it anymore. And then it's sort of like, oh, actually, and then that's when they learn about PTSD, or they learn about the different stages of grief. They learn about a lot of this stuff, and then their trauma is addressed after the fact. I think it would really be a lot more effective if we started talking about this stuff in like an age appropriate way as early as possible, and talking about how to handle these things, because we don't have a kind of a preparation plan in place. So, what people, um, they have a loved one that dies, and it just is absolutely devastates their life. And I get it. I mean, I get it. But at the same time, it's sort of like, well, but at the same time, we all know we're going to die. So maybe, and this is of course extreme stuff, right? But like maybe we need to kind of figure out how we're going to handle these different events ahead of time, instead of going through them and then kind of letting the chips fall where they may. You see this on the 600-pound life. Like a person goes through some sort of awful event, and that was how they ended up coping with it. They just ate, and they're in denial about it. They just don't know how to process their pain. And the next thing you know, they're 600 pounds. So I think if the conversation with trauma and pain, and that life is not fair and it's not meant to be, and um, that everybody's got stuff going on, and it's how you handle it that makes all the difference. And coming up with brainstorming some ways of, okay, how can you handle it? If your pet dies, like these things that are going to happen in your lifetime, like how are you going to handle this? And so I almost wonder if we had like that kind of an approach, how many would we be able as a society to kind of stave off personality disorders from developing? Does that make sense? I don't know. Okay, let me. Yeah, Sherry says, yeah, you're so right. Start before life happens. I was listening to, there's this entrepreneur, this podcast that I listened to, and he was talking about that there's all these different suicides in Silicon Valley. And he's like, you know what? Nobody talks about that. And he said what his theory is, that a lot of these kids, they came from money and they were completely sheltered from failure. And they went to Ivy League schools, and they really thought that they were going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. And so then they graduated, they got out, they started their own business, not realizing that when you have your own business, you're getting sand kicked in your face every single day. You do nothing but solve problems, and it's stressful, and it's not glamorous. Like there's that side of it that's just really unpleasant, you know? And that they are not prepared for that, because they don't talk about that kind of stuff in business school. It's more about your ideas and how to, profit and loss. And all of the mechanics of it, but there's not that talk about the emotional component of, because I will, it totally just knocks the legs out from underneath you when you have some really massive failures. And I can only imagine at that level where you've got millions of dollars of other people's money that are backing you and your idea, and then it fails. I would imagine, I would be curious to know too, like the suicide rate for Shark Tank, because it's just such an epic failure and there's so much involved, and there's not this, people aren't prepared for it. People think, oh, you have this idea, you're going to start a business, it's going to be so cool, you get to set your own hours, you get to, just be creative, and they're only thinking about the fantasy part of it all. It's the difference between fantasy and actuality. So, okay, let me scroll up here. Mendoz Anne says, we sometimes become a product of our environment. Absolutely. Absolutely. This is again why I think that it helps so much to get to start talking real stuff with kids as early on as possible, especially when they're at the kind of like junior high level, where they have that ability to understand and self-reflect, and to let them know. Because again, what do we do? Like, what do we do? These kids, let's say they grow up in this horribly abusive home, and then nobody tells them, hey, there's a really solid chance that you're going to grow up and marry somebody just like your abusive father, or you're going to become just like your abusive father. That's nobody talks about that. And so then what tends to happen, right? If they kind of tend to fall in one of those two paths, and then their lives, generally the ones that end up marrying an abuser, their lives really don't work, totally go off the rails. It's incredibly painful and disheartening, right? And then probably after 10 or 20 years, they have the awareness of, oh my gosh, I am being abused, but it's probably in a different way. And then they start getting help for it. And then they start connecting the dots. Just like, I feel like so much of that could be prevented had there been some earlier intervention with this kind of stuff, and really working with these behaviors and letting people know, especially with kids, because I don't think a lot of parents, when people are in abusive relationships, when they get out, they tend to think that they were in an abusive relationship because they were the target of the abuse, and that the kids, just that they were around it. But I don't think that the weight of the situation tends to register as severe as it really is. Because if you've been in an abusive relationship and you've got kids under the same roof, then they've been in an abusive relationship too. But the challenge with them is they don't have the vocabulary or the emotional maturity to understand or process what they've gone through. So I don't know. Just a lot. There's a lot to it. Forward Looking says, okay, chaps and chap S's, time for me to log off. Goodbye. And we are going to wrap things up here in about 3 minutes. Then we're going to go and do our guided meditation for tonight. Back to the not mentioning this kind of stuff. With my mom, my family situation, after her divorce from my father, she really got into Al-Anon, and she was a huge fan of therapy. And I mean, my goodness, she's been in, I don't even know, decades she's been in therapy, and really radically transformed her standards and her boundaries and so many things about herself. And when I began putting the dots together in my own life with the relationships that I had had and with boundaries and stuff like that, I was so upset. And this was recently, this was in the past handful of years. I had called her and I had said, like, you knew about all of this and you didn't say anything to me? Like, in her mind, she was like, oh, well, I didn't, she's like, I didn't think, she's like, I thought it was just me, because she thought her cycle had to do with her father. And so that it was just happening to her. Like, she didn't realize there's this impact of, this negative impact when the child is around all this and all these different, and not even that. I mean, like, it's not even just that, it's boundary standards and deal breakers. This kind of stuff is not taught, and it needs to be. So, and it makes it that much more difficult to even begin to comprehend it if you've never had it role modeled. Or in my case, I didn't have it role modeled until much later in life. So, I just was blown away and she was blown away too. Cause she's like, I didn't even think to bring it up because it was just her stuff. In reality, it wasn't. So. Blue Moon says, history repeats itself. There was a great quote I came across the other day. I think it was from Mark Twain, who said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. How accurate is that? I thought that was just so spot on. And that's so true. And I think it tends to repeat itself because we're not aware, because it's not exact. It's not the exact same thing that we experienced before. It's the next time there's a slightly different angle on it. And that's what makes it so difficult for us to link up the problem and the cycle that we're in. Stainless asks, Dana, have you seen the movie When Frankie Met Johnny? Who was in that? I think I might have seen that. Did that have Nicolas Cage in it? Is that the movie I'm thinking of? And I forget the gal. If it's the movie I'm thinking of, like, she had married, or what movie am I thinking of? She'd married young, like right out of high school. They got married, and then she just, I think I'm thinking of when Peggy Sue got married. Never mind, with Kathleen Turner, and I think it was Nicolas Cage. Let me write this down. Pen. When Frankie Met Johnny. I'll have to check it out. Always up for a good movie. Michelle Pfeiffer and Al Pacino. Yeah, interesting. BM asks real quick, where does road rage come from? I think that kind of stuff, it tends to just be extreme anger at feeling, victimized. So it's that reaction of like somebody's pulling one over on you. Like, how dare they cut me off in traffic? I have noticed when a person, Pia Melody, I think, would call it like a lack of containment boundary. When there is no filter, there is no restraint. They just say whatever they want to say, and they don't care. That's a really huge red flag, because most of us, we might feel that way if somebody cuts us off and maybe almost causes an accident or something. We might feel like really setting them straight or rear-ending their car, but we have that containment boundary that prevents us from doing so. So when a person lacks that, it's just very telling that they kind of lack a containment boundary in general, that they feel entitled and justified to treat other people like that. And that's not okay. That stuff is really scary, and it's not necessary, and it's not helpful. And it's not cool. Risha says she gets road rage. And by road rage, I mean that I yell inside my car. I don't even get out. You know, here's my trick for handling road rage is I tell myself that they must have explosive diarrhea, because there is no other reason that they would drive like that or behave like that. That's the only thing I can think of, that they have food poisoning so bad and that they're in such a hurry to go find a bathroom. And when I think of it that way, I just have to kind of chuckle. And then part of me just feels bad for them. It's probably not really what's going on, but it helps me to just not even take it personally at all. And yeah, Risha says, oh, haha. Yeah. And then you're fine. And the angrier they get, the more it's just kind of funny to tell yourself, boy, they've really got to go. They probably pooped their pants a long time ago and they're sitting, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, you just kind of create this whole narrative and you're unaffected by it. Morris says, that's a great trick. Yep. Let's see. Stanley, that's interesting. Stanley says, have you guys seen the New York Times article about serial killers on the rise? That's scary AF. I have not seen that article. I wonder if I'll have to read it. Let me write that down. I wonder if they're just catching them more, or they're able to connect crimes a lot more easily than they were 30 years ago, New York Times article. I think too, there's this huge level of disconnection that's happening, I think, worldwide, especially with more developed countries. The less developed countries really have the benefit of community involvement. You have to work together, right, in order to survive. We have lost that. I had mentioned, I think it was last week, that there was a show or documentary I was watching on, and I keep forgetting the word. It starts with an H, Japan, like Hikoko or something. That's not the word, but it's something along the lines of that. And it was this phenomenon of mainly Japanese men who completely shut down and had become recluse and just disconnected from society. And then there was another documentary too, I think it was either Japan or China, where people were living in these shared living spaces. And it was basically like the equivalent of here in the United States, if you can imagine like a Walmart or a Target, a big place like that, being totally gutted, and then putting in these little cubicles, like 7x7 cubicles, where they all share. There's like a communal bathroom that they all share, and there's no like roof, like they literally are cubicles, and people are renting these little spaces and living there, in part because it's more affordable than other housing, but also in part of it was giving a lot of them this sense of community because there were so many other people around them. So I think when we have that sense of disconnection from other people, then we also tend to lose empathy because we're just not connecting with other people. Um, and that's a problem. And a lot of this stuff, learning empathy and being validated and kind of personality development, a lot of that's thought to really occur within the person's first 7 years of their life. And it's very significant time for bonding for between parents and children. And if that's not occurring for whatever reason, then, you know, then they're not connecting and at risk of attachment disorders and then everything else that kind of stems from that later in life. Let's see. Siddharth asks, is anyone who kills another person a psychopath? No. No, it's more of you can have a person could snap. A lot of people, I think any of us can get pushed to that point where we snap and make some really poor decisions or take it out on people that we shouldn't be taking it out on. Psychopath, like like antisocial personality disorder, that kind of stuff, there tends to be, it's a long-standing pattern, like a lack of empathy, a lack of remorse, a lack of respect for other people and for rules and for laws. And they might also kind of be sadistic. They, you know, tend to kind of live life on their own, you know, with their own set of rules, which tend to kind of be very flexible depending on what they want at the time. You know, probably the best way I have ever heard, let me open this up real quick so I can make sure I'm telling you right. Okay. The best way I have ever heard personalities divided up is with Dungeons and Dragons, with alignment of the different characters. So it's a grid pattern of 3 rows across and then 3 rows down. So you have across the top, it's, well, I should say down the first column. The first column is all lawful, the second column is all neutral, and the third column is all chaotic. And then horizontally, you have good and then neutral and then evil. So you have a person that's lawful good, then neutral good, then chaotic good. Then you have lawful neutral, true neutral, chaotic neutral. Then you have lawful evil, neutral evil, and then chaotic evil. So for example, if you have a murderous dictator or a person who commits crimes that are within the bounds of the law. So maybe the law, well, I mean, for me, I think you can look at slavery, right? So just because something is legal doesn't make it right. So you had a lot of people that were engaging in a lot of really horrific behavior that we would consider evil, but it was still within the bounds of the law. You have chaotic evil, which, for example, that would be like the character, the Joker from Batman, completely unpredictable, doesn't give a care about anything. Life is a flip of a coin. Like there's no moral code. There is no, you just completely chaotic and unpredictable. Then you have like lawful good, which would be like Superman, for example, really follows all of the laws and he's good. You have, so I don't know, there's like different character types for each one. It's interesting. I think that's so much more accurate than, than the way personality, different personalities are currently understood. It's a lot easier when you kind of start carving it up that way. It makes a lot more sense because then you can kind of think, oh, actually, this person is completely chaotic. Like they're more chaotic evil. That's a big problem. Like run from those people. Or if they're, I don't know, it just helps you. It helps me anyway, think about stuff more clearly. But no, as far as like serial killers, hands down would qualify for antisocial personality disorder. You know, people that have snapped, maybe not had any other behavior that kind of pointed to that would be another story. It also depends on like the severity of the crime. Like Chris Watts, I think is a good example of that. No prior history of like conduct disorders, no trouble with the law, no, you know, not abusive. There was no, everybody kind of just thought he was this nice, normal, mellow guy. But the heinousness, the lack of remorse, like the viciousness of his crimes puts him in a different level. It's one thing to kill your spouse, right? I'm not saying that that's okay by any stretch. It's one thing to feel trapped in your marriage and you're like, you know what? I just hate my spouse so much. I just want to be free. You do that. But to kill two of your kids, that takes it to a whole different level. And then to go throw their bodies in a tub of hot oil is, again, like to a whole different level. And then finding out that he's just been basically a pathological liar, it kind of confirms that it's not just, you know, not just a guy that snapped. Ileana asks, can you do an autistic social health education class? I could see about putting something like that together. Is there any specifics that you would want covered? Like the differences between autism and narcissism? Stainless says, I don't believe Chris Watts snapped. If you look at the body cameras, interviews, texts, he just decided to kill everybody. I agree. The fact that it was that vicious, that premeditated, and that he was able to have that knowledge and be around his children, knowing that the fate that he had in store for them. I mean, all of it. It just, the more I found out about that case, the more it would just hit a new low. And it's just hard. It's hard to fully understand a person who is that malicious and has that such a level of disregard. You know, we talk about on this channel that evil has no rules. And that's something that's so important for normal, decent people to understand. We keep thinking, well, surely that would be their line in the sand. Surely they would never do X, Y, and Z. Surely this would be, you know, and they just keep moving the line, and their behavior the bad behavior just knows no limits. There's no containment there. It's whatever they want by whatever means necessary. It's horrific. They don't care about their children. They don't care about other people. They don't care. Everything suits their needs, and that's it. Aita, let's touch on your question really quick, but the question about some sort of autism social health education class. when this video airs, because I'm probably not going to see it tonight, could you come back probably tomorrow, or at least it'll probably take about 3 hours, I think, for this video to actually go live, to the point where like you can leave comments. But could you come back in the comment section tomorrow and put in there like what you would like to see in some sort of class regarding autism, and then I'll see what I can find. And if I know that there's yeah, I'll work on that. We'll work on putting some information together and then talking to some other people that have, that can give some more input on that. Okay, let me see, Aisha. Okay, I guess the question mainly with autism was, what would you teach people with autism about the world of people around them when they are still in high school? It would be the exact same things I would teach anybody else, because everybody else is just as vulnerable. I think people that are autistic have that added challenge, that added level of vulnerability, but it would just be boundaries and standards and deal breakers, and really getting in tune with trusting your perceptions of people and how to safely and appropriately build up trust. And I would use a lot of different examples between, so people, because we all, I think, learn best that way if it's really spelled out, and it's kind of here's something that's maybe kind of either dysfunctional or potentially problematic, and then here's something that's a more empowered way of handling it. So really using that comparison. I talked about this before, there's a magazine, I don't even know if it's still around. It was back when I was a kid, it was called Highlights. And it was a bunch of activities for kids that you could do. But this one section of it was really always, I just loved it. It was so fascinating to me. And it was this little cartoon strip. And all it was two pictures side by side. And the characters, there was Goofus and then there was Gallant. And Goofus was kind of like the sociopath, and Gallant was the person with morals and values and respect for other people. And they would have these little scenarios. So, like a person, I don't know, a guy drops his wallet, let's say. Goofus would think, hey, it's my lucky day, and he'd go run off with the wallet, whereas Gallant would go up to the guy and say, excuse me, sir, I think you dropped your wallet. So these little kind of micro interactions that demonstrate character can be really helpful. And then doing that very similar comparison with a lot of things, with concepts like trust, kind of showing the kind of more dangerous way, which would be, oh, I'm just taking this person at complete face value, and oh, sure, you want to come in my house, or you want me to go to your house, or you want me to loan you money. That's a problem, versus a more empowered approach, which would be to kind of hold that line of, no, I'm not comfortable with that, or what have you. And then also just teaching to understand that your emotions are an indicator of also what's going on in your outside world. It's a big part of how we process information. Okay, so real quick, because I know we're over time here, but Aisha had asked a question really quick, and I hope I got your name right because I'm scrolling down and I missed it. But the question, it's important. And Omaluk, thank you for addressing that. I'll just say it out loud, just because for people listening on the podcast, that I don't leave them hanging. But the question was that she was concerned about, let me see if I can find it. Oh, she says, what if I'm antisocial now after narcissistic abuse and I didn't used to be? One of the most confusing things about that term antisocial is that people tend to understand it as in uh, a person who doesn't like being around other people. They like being alone, or yeah, they're just kind of a loner. In terms of antisocial personality disorder, that term has more to do with like their behavior is antisocial in the terms of like against society. So we're all faced with problems, right? It's how we handle them that's the difference. So we can handle things in a pro-social way, which is, kind of community oriented, team oriented, honest, uh, some sort of moral compass there. It's a pro-social way. Or we can handle things in a really problematic way, which is antisocial. So it's not for the benefit of society, it's against society. And that's why. So I guess just knowing that, but then the term that a lot of survivors who have experienced this, what they're really meaning is they're looking for the term asocial. So a person who's asocial tends to be more isolative. They don't want to be around other people. They don't want to socialize. They might feel, you might even feel like, oh my gosh, have I somehow turned into a sociopath or a narcissist? Like, is this contagious? What's wrong with me? And I honestly, I really feel like to some degree that's pretty normal for a person to have gone through when you've been victimized in such a horrific way. That feeling of wanting to isolate can feel like you're numb and you're detached from the rest of society, and a lot of the kind of empathy that was there before is been replaced with anger. And so there's just this kind of lack of connection to other people that can be really scary, of who have I become. Oftentimes that kind of stuff simmers down in time as you move forward in your healing, but it can definitely be helpful to speak with somebody who, like a therapist or a life coach, or somebody who's really understands CPTSD and can kind of help you work through that. But yeah, wanting to be alone is very normal. I would just encourage you, even though you might want to be alone and you don't want to socialize, to really make an effort to get out there and to do activities in a very safe way. So if you have friends or family that you associate with, going out to a movie, it doesn't have to be like this day-long excursion, but going out to a movie, going out for dinner, even if you don't feel like it. And the reason being is because when a person gets in that mode of isolating, years can go by before, and they might never get to the place where they really feel completely quote unquote healed and like their old self, and that they're ready to be happy and social and all of that. So I think there's a lot of value in kind of I think the longer we wait to reintegrate, to kind of move forward and to get back into society, the harder it becomes. So I don't know if you've heard me talk about this before, but I really view it as very much along the same lines as physical therapy after, let's say you had a bad car accident, something traumatic happened, right? And you broke your leg. And one of the first things that they'll do right after they fix your leg is they're going to start you on physical therapy. You don't feel like it. It hurts. It's uncomfortable. You don't want to do it, but it's the best thing to heal your leg. This is my working theory on this. I really feel it's very similar with PTSD. You don't feel like going out. You don't want to go out. It's painful. It's difficult. It's unpleasant. It's still from somebody who's gone through this, I really believe that there's a lot of value in just being around other people and not losing that connection to society, because it's just really difficult to get it back. So I hope that helps. Meetup.com. If you've looking for a place to meet some new people and do some fun things, I'm a huge fan of that. It's a great way, you know, it's the general public, so keep your boundaries up, but it's a great way to get out there and to be around other people, hopefully doing things that you enjoy. And it just expands your support system. It expands your social circle. And, you know, you can make some really great connections in there. Okay. So let's do, we've gone way over tonight. I'm so sorry, you guys. Okay, so let's do our guided meditation and then we'll call it a night. And I will see you guys next week. So take some time and find a comfortable spot if you are sitting or if you're able to lay down. And just let yourself get settled in. And allow your body to become heavy as your muscles relax. Let's take some deep breaths in through your nose. And exhale out through your mouth. With each breath in, breathing in that restorative, healing, wonderful oxygen. And with each exhale, letting go of any stress, tension, pent-up frustrations or anger that you're ready to release. Allowing yourself to be fully present in this moment. Feeling yourself as you get comfortable in your body, reconnecting with who you are, noticing every breath, every inhale, and every exhale. Turning your attention inward till you can feel your heartbeat. Being fully present in your body. Bringing your attention down into your feet, into your toes. Feeling your energy as it pools in your feet, giving you a sense of solidness and connection from your chest down to your feet. Being fully present in your body. And continuing to breathe. Bringing your attention up to the top of your forehead. Easily and effortlessly relaxing the muscles in your forehead and around your eyes, your cheeks, your mouth and your jaw, letting your tongue fall from the roof of your mouth, letting your jaw hang open, feeling your face relax, relaxing your neck, your shoulders, letting them get heavy and drop down as you're releasing all of that stress and tension. Noticing if there's any tightness in your shoulders or in your chest, and making the conscious effort now to release that, letting it dissipate easily and effortlessly as it flows away from your body. Relaxing your arms, your forearms, your hands and your fingers. Feeling the weight of your arms as they relax completely. And continuing to breathe. Bring your attention down into your stomach, relaxing any knots or tension that you might have there. Being fully present in this moment, knowing that in this moment you are safe and you are here, releasing any regret about the past and any anxiety about the future. We are here in this moment. And in this moment, there is nothing but calm. Now moving down towards your pelvis and your hips, relaxing your hips, your thighs, and your legs, allowing them to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable for you. Feeling the weight of your legs as you fully relax. Bringing your awareness now back to your complete body, feeling the heaviness of it, being fully present in this moment. Continuing to breathe. Now let's visualize a beautiful, healing, restorative white light. It's your inner peace, and it's everything that connects you to what's good and right within yourself and within the world and within others. And letting that light grow larger and larger as it easily and effortlessly expands up into the top of your forehead and down to the tips of your toes, down into the tips of your fingers, till you can feel that light around every single cell in your body, bringing healing and peace. Let's take a moment to connect to the various, to everything that is good and right. You can think about some things that we're thankful and grateful for. Realizing that even if we've been through something traumatic, that there is still so much that is good and right with the world and good and right within you. And that it's okay to take time for gratitude, even if you're feeling like your whole world is coming down. There's still so much that is good and right with your life. So perhaps being thankful and grateful for the health that you do have, or for a hot, clean shower, or for a sunny day, or for kittens or puppies. Being thankful and grateful for the various people that have been in your life that have been supportive and caring. And taking some time now to acknowledge all of the different strengths that you have, that there is truly so much to be thankful for. You are a warrior. You have been through so much and you've made it through. And acknowledging that about yourself, that you are strong, you are courageous, you are brave, you are intelligent, you are insightful, you are becoming much more connected to your authentic self. You're dedicated to personal growth. You're empowered. So many things that are right about you. Let's take a moment. Visualize giving yourself a really big hug. Just acknowledging how far you've come and how much you've been through. And that you handled things in the way that you best knew how. And that you've come through this. Just acknowledging that warrior spirit within you. That you can do this. You are doing this. That you can move through this. And that you can rebuild. And that you truly can come out on the other side of this as more empowered and more connected to yourself than you ever thought possible. You know deep down what nourishes you and what drains you. You know. So much of everything that we discuss every week, it's not so much new, it's reminding you. It's reminding you of who you really are, of your deeper self, your inner self. That self never leaves you. It's always there. You just have to remember who you are, the core of you. When you're ready, come on back and open your eyes. So thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. This is something that we do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we normally go for 3 hours, so a little over tonight. But I hope you are able to join us next week, and then also book club 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, always the last Thursday of every month. If you'd like to see a list of the books we're reading for 2019, you can check them out on my website, thriveafterabuse.com/book club. So I hope you guys can make it. Have a wonderful evening. Lots of love to you guys. As always, you are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care. Good night.